4 decades after the Edmund Fitzgerald sank in a violent Lake Superior storm, the cause is still a mystery. The captain of the 729-foot ore carrier was from Ottawa Hills, and 6 other crewmen were from Northwest Ohio. And as we mark the anniversary of that tragedy, 13 ABC's Lisa Guyton introduces us to a local man who not only spent time on board, but also lost a family member.
When she was christened in 1958, the Edmund Fitzgerald became the biggest ship to ever sail the Great Lakes.
The legend lives on from the Chippewa on down at the big lake they call Gitchagumi.
The giant ore boat set record after record, including most iron ore carried in a single trip and most carried in a season.
The ship was the pride of the American side, coming back from some mill in Wisconsin.
They built bigger boats after her, but she continued to break records for seasonal tonnage, mainly because she ran long and she carried a lot, and she started work early and she was never laid up.
But on November 10th, 1975, she carried her crew to the bottom of Lake Superior.
Later that night, when his lights went out of sight, came the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald.
Tom Walton is a retired editor of the Toledo Blade. We brought Tom back to the very dock where he got off the ore boat for the last time.
I remember this place very well. It's kind of strange to see it again after all these years. The last time I was right here, that was the last time I got off the Fitzgerald.
In the summer of 1963, Walton was a porter on the ship.
I can still picture it sitting right here and being overwhelmed by its size and knowing that it was longer and bigger, faster than any other ships out there.
His job was to help feed the crew, keep the officers' quarters clean, as well as take care of any passengers who were guests of the company. He still smiles when he thinks of the ship and that summer.
We were very much a tourist attraction, and people kind of held the ship in awe everywhere we went. And I think the crew felt that and felt a certain pride.
Walton's ties to the tragedy run deep, and his sorrow lives close to the surface.
I know where it is, and I remember where I last saw it, and that's right here. So, yeah, it's an emotional moment for sure.
His uncle Grant Walton was an oiler on board the Big Fitz that fateful night. Tom was working at a California newspaper when he first heard that a freighter had gone down in Lake Superior.
It was one of those rare moments in your life where you don't need to be told the worst news because you have a feeling that's what's going to happen, and it was it, indeed, the Fitz.
Walton's father also spent time on the Edmund Fitzgerald and many other lake freighters during his career as a chief engineer.
Though he loved what he was doing, that love evaporated when he lost his brother, and it just really, he felt it very profoundly. And he retired very shortly after that.
Toledo was a frequent port of call for the Edmund Fitzgerald. In fact, one of her nicknames was the Toledo Express. The giant ore carrier came to this very dock to unload a number of times through her 17-year career. And even though it said Milwaukee on her stern, Toledo was truly the Fitzgerald's home port. She was here for the last time on October 31st, 1975. 10 days later, she carried her crew into the history books.
Does anyone know where the love of God goes when the waves turn the minutes to hours?
The ship was just miles from the safety of Whitefish Bay when it sank. The storm that night was one of the worst on Lake Superior in decades. Captain McSorley had radioed the captain of the Arthur Anderson to tell him the Fitz had a list. Vent covers were lost and a fence rail was down and the radar was out. But his last transmission was that they were holding their own. Soon after that, the mighty Fitz went down without a call for help.
Superior, they said, never gives up or dead when the gales of November come early.
Chris Gilchrist heads up the National Museum of the Great Lakes here in Toledo.
The Arthur Anderson was right behind her, and she made it through the storm. Other boats sailed through that storm without any problem.
So what did cause the massive ship to end up on the bottom of Lake Superior? There are plenty of theories. It was the largest maritime investigation in Great Lakes history, but an exact cause has never been determined.
The continued interest in the Fitzgerald is based on people's desire to prove the unprovable. Mysteries are good. They keep people asking questions, and asking questions is what keeps our minds sharp.
Some of the remnants of the wreckage are now within the walls of the National Museum of the Great Lakes.
This is a life raft, an inflatable life raft from the Edmund Fitzgerald. The Fitzgerald was equipped with 2 of these, one at the bow, one at the stern.
No one ever had a chance to make it into those life rafts. And the reason why doesn't matter much to Tom and many of the other families anymore. But keeping the story alive does.
And all that remains is the faces and the names of the wives and the sons and the daughters.
Those of us who once sailed upon it or who lost someone in the tragedy, I think we have a responsibility to keep the memory of those 29 men alive.
And Tom is doing just that. He gives talks on the Fitzgerald around the region. Coming up tomorrow at 6, we hear chilling Coast Guard transmissions as the search for the Fitz was underway. And we take you to a place that has given family members a chance to grieve and to remember their loved ones. You'll also hear from another expert on the likelihood of ever finding out just what caused the Fitz to sink. And I'd like to thank the Great Lakes Shipwreck Museum and the Historical Collection of the Great Lakes at BGSU for some of the pictures and video in our story. Reporting live, Lisa Guyton, 13 ABC, Action News.
Fascinating. All right, Lisa, thanks very much.